Welcome back to The Straight Shift, everyone, the podcast where we get very real about cars, car maintenance, driving, and everything in between. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects millions of women, but doesn't necessarily get enough attention, and that is safety in rideshare services. Uber and Lyft are in the headlines again, and not for good reasons. They are facing a tidal wave of lawsuits from female riders alleging everything from harassment to full on sexual assault from their drivers. And unfortunately, these are not isolated incidents, folks. The numbers are scary, averaging about 6,000 assaults per year. And that's just the incidents that Uber and Lyft are reporting. Like other sexual assault statistics, these numbers are likely just a fraction of the reality because victims don't always report. And the response to these complaints from the big rideshare partners has been, let's say, underwhelming at best. And while Uber and Lyft claim to have strict vetting protocols for their drivers, including criminal background checks, there's still a risk to using these services, especially for women. So what happens when women say enough and take matters into their own hands? Well, that's where our guest today comes in. Kimberly Evans is the founder of Just Her Rideshare. It is a women-only rideshare service that is changing the way we think about safe transportation. And I am so excited to have her today to share the story behind this unique company, how it works, and why it is so important today. Welcome, Kimberly. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, Leanne. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to share this space with you today, and I can't wait to have this great conversation with you.
Well, let's just start with the elephant in the rideshare room. Why was Just Her Rideshare even necessary in the first place? And what made you personally decide to start this business?
Well, first of all, I was my own customer. I'd never taken a ride share. I grew up stranger danger. So when I was introduced to the industry, I knew I wanted to see if there were other women who felt like me. And we wanted to give women an option to choose how they experience riding with others. Once we started digging deep and we found that over 40% of women were having or had reported uncomfortable encounters, including serious sexual crimes and yes, even murder. We knew at that point that we had to do something about it. And so that's why Just Her Rideshare is so important in the industry today.
That's just crazy. I hadn't even heard about the murder piece of it. The sexual assault piece was bad enough. Geez, okay. That puts a whole
Yes.
new perspective on it. What do you see are the biggest safety issues with these companies, and why do we have these problems? Is it there's something they're not doing?
Well, absolutely. We found and we decided that we would not use the same background vetting process that the industry leaders use because what we found is that they were allowing perpetrators, maybe not intentionally, to get through their system. In the industry, we know that statistically women are less likely to perpetrate crimes against each other. And so by putting women together, we mitigate risk factors there. But also, we go a step further, and our vetting background is just as it would be for any other background check. It's not just because we're women, because there are women who lure other women into prostitution and sex trafficking and those types of things. And so we found that a lot of these people who were getting through the industry leaders' background checks, these were people who purposely are committing unlawful crimes against women. Not all, but a large number of them. And it's because they haven't been vetted properly.
That's just absolutely terrifying. I mean, we used to just get into taxis all the time, but we tended to, for some reason, trust that process a little bit more because of the lengths that taxi companies have to go through, and even individuals like in New York City, it costs like $1 million or something crazy like that to be able to drive a taxi in New York. And the risk of losing that if there is a criminal complaint, boom, that's gone. And so we've trusted taxis, but now we're just getting into a car with a random stranger. And like you said, exactly what our parents taught us not to do when we were children.
Yes.
We're talking to people we don't know online. We're getting into cars with them. And we've really shifted this whole perception of what safety is. And I think we've forgotten some of our common sense that at least
Yes.
we learned when you and I were kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. even when we were doing a lot of research around how women viewed what we wanted to offer them. Is it that they thought about, these safety things, or they had a heightened level of awareness? Even when we polled women and they said, well, it doesn't matter to me one way or another if the driver's a female. Once we started digging deeper, we asked them, well, how then do you ride? What's your experience? And the first things that they said, I check the tag, I check the driver, I share my ride. And those are heightened levels of awareness raised, right? So typically when we get into, or we're with our peers or we get into cars with women, we don't often have that level, or we feel that we have to go through to that degree to check because we feel more comfortable. So sometimes it's not just about safety, but it's about the comfort, the peace of mind of being with your peers. So
Absolutely. And I think about that just a few weeks ago. I rarely use rideshare services unless I'm traveling, but several weeks ago, one of my best friends we had a surprise 50th birthday party for her, and I knew there would probably be some adult beverages involved, and I
yeah,
just did not want to deal with the nightmare parking situation at the venue. So my husband was able to drop me off, and I just planned to take an Uber home. This was before you and I met, and so I was like, oh, I really do not want to take an Uber home by myself, but one, I have some Krav Maga training. I have a weapon on me and I do take some precautions, but it is a little bit unnerving, especially since so many of the drivers, especially that run the late night and on the weekends, a lot of them are men. And
yes.
this is why we choose the bear in the woods, because we know what the bear's intentions are. We do not necessarily know what the strange man's intentions are, but anytime I have ordered one of those ride shares and I saw, oh, it's a woman, it just
Yeah.
immediately, it just kind of changes the whole thing and my whole experience. I can relax, I can kick back, I can close my eyes, I can take a nap if it's a long ride. When I'm in a car with a strange man, I am on alert the
Absolutely.
entire trip. So,
Absolutely. And a lot of times when we look at the industry and we talk to men, and sometimes they may not often identify with this feeling until we started talking about their daughters, their wives, their moms. But we, as men and women, we identify with fear or discomfort very differently, right?
we do.
So you get a guy in the car, and I've even had some men to tell me that they've gotten into some vehicles and it seems very sketchy, and they start to think, sort of go into this protective mode. But when we get into someone's vehicle and we know that we are very vulnerable because once you're in, you're in. And if we see someone go down a wrong path or take a wrong turn, or if maybe perhaps the behavior is quite different, we have this heightened, sometimes even a physiological impact. Like we
Mhm.
start to get nervous and anxious. And a lot of times that happens very differently from women than it does for men. And so that's why when we are with women who are, again, less likely to perpetrate a crime against us, we feel more comfortable. We have such a peace of mind. And so it's not just that we're trying to paint men as the Uber and the Lyft drivers as, boogeymans, or they're all going to harm us. Sometimes it's just about, I just want to have a comfortable ride, and this makes me feel comfortable, and I should have the option to do that.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about exactly how it works. I know that you hire women drivers and you vet them, but how do you vet the riders so that, only people that your service serves are riding in that vehicle?
So we don't necessarily vet writers in a sense like through our platform. Again, keep in mind when you're pairing women together and you're building this type of community, you're mitigating some risk factors from the beginning. We have most of our women who drive on our platform, our early adopters, were already in the gig space. So they're already the Uber drivers, the Lyft drivers, the Door Dashers, the Uber Eats. Many of them are already used to transporting other passengers besides women. They work with us because they love the fact that they're likely 99.9% of the time are going to always get a woman passenger. But there are occasions where we transport men. We actually leave it up to the women to decide. If you feel comfortable and you want to earn that revenue, we don't say you can't do that. We just love giving women the option to choose how they want to experience riding with others. So we don't have anything to vet our customers other than the fact that we require photos of the drivers and the customers. We require that they identify each other. And so sometimes when the customers are creating their profiles and they put in avatars, we send them nice little messages that says, hey, it's our policy that we're looking out for your safety as well, that you identify the driver, but we are also looking out for our drivers if they're able to identify you as well. Please upload a photo. And so that is our policy. That's one thing that we do.
And that's wonderful, because I didn't even think about kind of the opposite scenario where the woman is the driver in one of these gig scenarios and someone gets into the car and has nefarious intentions, shall we say, or just simply takes advantage of that opportunity. So it's good that you have the protections on both ends, while also keeping it open to really anyone who might feel more vulnerable, because it might be a trans woman, it might be a non-binary person, who doesn't feel comfortable, and now they have, a safer option for riding.
And that's our goal, Leanne, because a lot of times in the news stories, you're always hearing about the perpetrator against the customer, but no one ever talks about the driver's safety and what the drivers have to go through. There's so many, stories that we hear about drivers who were attacked. We hear about customers who were very rude and abusive to the drivers. And so our community creates a safe work environment for drivers. That's why we're such a powerful community, because we're not only looking out for customers, but we're also looking out for drivers as well.
The biggest risk a driver will face from having me in the car is having me talk their ear off, because I want to know everything about them. I see it as a networking opportunity. So on that ride home from my friend's birthday party, it was a nice young man, and he was originally from Italy, and I heard a slight accent, and he works in IT during the week and just runs gigs on the weekend. And we had a lovely conversation. Part of it was even in Italian. We had a great time. But one of the reasons I do that, part of it's just me, I'm a talker, but I will also do that to intentionally engage the driver.
Yes.
As a safety kind of measure.
Yes, absolutely. And one more thing I'll say about that is, and that's how we sort of create our community. And we've built this trusted network of both women, drivers and customers, building community together, because we encourage the talking and the sharing of stories and journeys, because that's how you get to know people. And that's how you get to build community. We've had drivers and customers to go on vacation together because the one driver was the customer's driver for almost a year. They got to know each other. They got to build community. We have drivers who have been hired full time by their customers that were attorneys who were looking for work. You would never know that unless you're having conversations. So that's one of the things that we encourage in our community, is that if you're vulnerable, now, if you want a quiet ride, if you don't want a chatty driver, you can get that as well. But if you are vulnerable enough to open up and find out, you never know who you're getting in your car. And you know what I'm saying? So it makes a difference. And so we love that. So we love the talkers as well.
Well, that's good. And, actually, as you were talking about the risks to the drivers themselves, that it actually reminded me when I was in college, one of my good friends from high school who was out in college in Oklahoma, she was delivering pizzas as her college job, and she was murdered. And that has always stayed with me. And I didn't until this moment really connect it with the risks to people who drive for the rideshare companies or for these delivery companies. And so
absolutely. And I have a tragic story myself that kept me from utilizing rideshare services. And I'm not quite sure if I shared this with you. It's part of my story. Now it was the pre-rideshare era, so it wasn't like a rideshare driver, but when I was in my early 20s, one of my really good friends, we had partied the weekend before. On Monday, she was standing at a bus stop and she was abducted and brutally murdered. They didn't find her murderer for 12 years until they found his DNA matched another young woman kind of in the Raleigh-Durham area. And that's how they found him. So it left me feeling very vulnerable and afraid. So when I was introduced to this industry, I then knew that this was something that I wanted to at least see if other women felt like I did. Once we start the discovery phase, I then stumbled across a young woman at USC Columbia who was out partying with her friends, as college students often do, and hopped into an Uber impersonator, someone she thought was her Uber, and was
Ooh.
abducted and brutally murdered. And it was her story. And I call her name every time I can, Samantha Josephson, because it was her story that made me want to move forward and creating this safe space for women to have these options.
Yeah, and especially when you're out, and one of the reasons you use a ride share is if you are out having a good time, there are adult beverages or whatever involved, your judgment is less, you're not paying
Yes.
attention, so you can't rely as much on yourself to keep
Yes.
yourself safe. You are extra vulnerable. And people say, oh well, she shouldn't have been drunk or whatever, but we know that's absolute crap, because men go out and get drunk all the time and don't have to necessarily worry about getting abducted and murdered just trying to get home. So
Absolutely.
having that extra layer of security that doesn't rely on you to remember to check your driver and to check the plate and to check the type of car, and for a lot of people, they're not like me. They don't know the exact, model of the car. It's like he tells you that a Nissan Altima is pulling up, and they don't necessarily know what a Nissan Altima is. I'm looking at it and say, oh, okay, well, it's this year. And
Exactly. And you're right. You're
but that's because
absolutely
I'm a
right.
nerd.
Well, and that's because you know the industry, but you're right. A lot of our rideshare users don't know, and they're vulnerable in that regard. While yes, there are, I think maybe I saw a report that Uber maybe did like 16.1 billion in rides, I think in 2024, 2020, 2023, because their new report hasn't come out yet. And when you think about it, if you think about 20,000 or 50,000 assaults, it may seem very minute, but one is too many for us.
One is too many.
All it takes is one. And if it's your daughter, your wife, your sister, then you see it very differently, because overall, yes, that may be a small percentage, but not to us. To our community, we believe that we should be able to ride in a stranger's car and not be abducted or not be sexually assaulted or not be hit on. Like, dude, like I'm trying to get from point A to point B. I don't want to date you. I don't want to go out. So it's all kinds of uncomfortable things. It's not just the tragic things, but it's the discomfort of, feeling like somebody is coming on too strong or admiring you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. Like we women, we don't do that to each other. So,
Right.
you know,
Exactly. And that's a great point. I think that's one of the reasons why some people are excited about the driverless taxis in some cities,
yes,
with the whole self-driving cars. But then that also requires you to trust a computer to drive the car. And we've certainly seen a number of issues with those vehicles, and I'm going to have to do
yes,
a whole podcast on those. So this is kind of a nice, happy medium. It's like it's still a human,
yes,
but it's a
yes,
human that can have a higher trust factor
yes,
than
absolutely.
some other humans. So, what's been your biggest challenge? I mean, as an innovator and an entrepreneur and starting a service that had never been done before, I certainly understand that this is not an easy thing to do. What have been some of your biggest challenges to date in getting this new company off the ground?
Yeah, so I wasn't the first. There are several of us out there. There were several before me that had tried. There are some international companies that have tried and were successful. One of the things that I found, I did a lot of research because remember we started building during COVID, so the world was shut down, so we had a lot of time to figure it out. So we did a ton of discovery phases and customer discovery and all of that. And I called rideshare companies. I wanted to know women who had tried, what was the biggest setback, why did you fail, and most of them told me that it is due to revenue sensitivity, it is due to the high cost of insurance, because the insurance likely did put a lot of those companies that tried out of business. In fact, it's been my biggest pain point as well. And so it's really that you can't build a company like this, not as a transportation network company. Like you can get a commercial license and transport people through non-medical transportation. You can get a limousine, a commercial license and do that. But to be a transportation network company is a different animal. And the insurance will put most companies, new stage companies, out of business. So those have been some of my biggest challenges, but I did the work and I understood going in what it was going to take to do that. So we were poised in position to launch at a time where we thought we could get the most bang for our buck and that we could grow quickly enough and scale quickly enough to offset that high costs of insurance. And so, other than that, the biggest challenge has been fundraising. I mean, imagine fundraising as a woman and then imagine fundraising as a Black woman. We know statistically it's not in our favor, but it's been the biggest challenge of building this company is getting enough funding, decreasing the funding gaps to help us scale quicker, meaning launching into new markets and things like that. So overall, yes, we've had some other challenges of growing companies like acquiring great team. You know, when you are revenue sensitive and you can't pay them, it's hard to get people to really sign on to your vision. We have a great group of people that have, but it hasn't always been easy to get to this point.
And that makes sense, especially since in the business investment community, again, so many of those folks are men, and you know they're wonderful people, but they don't necessarily understand the pain point in the market that you are solving. So they just don't get it on the same visceral level. You know, when Trish, who introduced me to you, and she's the one that I was at her birthday party for. She told me about your company, then she was kind of helping you, and I was like, oh my gosh, where has this been?
Yes.
I immediately got it, and she didn't even have to say anything else. I was like, rideshare
Yes.
for women by women, done. I was sold, and if I'd had a lot of money to invest, I would have been knocking on your door. But other business investors don't necessarily get it at that just gut level and know
Yes.
that this is a thing. And
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing, going back to sort of the men controlling the funding and why they don't see what we do as important, because they don't identify with the same pain points that we
right,
identify with. So again, when they're getting into cars, they're not afraid. They're likely talking about a game or the stock market or something like that. And if a driver goes down the wrong way, they're like, "Hey, dude, you may be going down the wrong way." But for us as women, we see it so different. We feel it different. And so when they think of us, they think of, "Oh, you're just another Uber or you're an Uber wannabe." It doesn't resonate. And so when we're speaking to men about the importance of what we do, we hone right in. What if your daughter needed a
right.
ride from the airport late at night and her only option was with a ride share drive in a strange city? Then it starts to resonate with them because they tell me then all the time, well, I'm tracking her location. Okay, well, you're tracking her location, which means you're concerned about her safety. And so we have had men to invest in us when they identify with us on that level. But in terms of the big dollars and the investment dollars, we all know where those dollars go to, and we're hoping that we will continue to make progress and that more women founders will be funded the way that most men are. In particular, getting millions of dollars just to go figure something out. We're doing great work here. And so, but it's just hard. I'm not an anomaly. It's others in my industry and other founder friends who experience the same thing. But fundraising has been brutal. Yes.
We need to somehow get the attention of Mackenzie Scott and see if she wants to get on
Yes.
board with this. I think she will understand.
Yes. So don't get me wrong. We have many people who have believed in us, and we have gotten this company this far because of them. But our game-changing investor is out there. But you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get to the prince. So I'm kissing frogs right now.
Well, we've got to kiss the frogs that will lead us to the right princess. I think that's what we need to be doing.
Well, yes, yeah, that's so true. You know what? Thank you for saying that because I've been using that and I share it with my team and we laugh about it. But no, it is to get us to the princess because I believe that our investor could be. I don't have to always look for the men investors. Our investor could be the woman who's out there who understands what we're doing, who sees the mission and the vision. And so, yeah, so I'm going to start saying the princess and not the prince.
Well, what markets do you currently serve? I know you're still small, but you are
Yes.
trying to grow responsibly, which as a
Yes.
business owner, I also respect.
Charlotte is our biggest market. It is the market that has proven to us that we can do what we're doing. But we also have a small presence in 6 other cities in North and South Carolina. So Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham, and then Columbia, Charleston, and Greenville, South Carolina. And hopefully, if things keep moving in the right direction, we are looking at launching some sectors in the DMV area. So the Washington, D.C. area, and then also Nashville, Tennessee.
That's fantastic. Now, how do people say they're in one of these areas, like me? It's like, I know who I'm calling next time I have to go to the airport. But
Yes.
how do people learn more about your company, and how do people who are in one of these service areas actually use your
Yeah.
company?
Yeah. So first of all, download the app. So all of you out there, get your phones out now and download the app at Just Her Ride. Yes, yes. Make sure you have the app, and you can create your profile. So we have the app. Do that next time. If you're not a consistent rider, the next time you think about rideshare, just think of us. Even if the times are going to be a little bit of a longer wait, we ask you to plan ahead. So women, we're already used to planning ahead. We plan for our kids, we plan for our communities, we volunteer, we plan all of those. So you can plan ahead. So you download the app first. You can subscribe to our newsletter at justherrideshare.com. You can also become a part of our community platform, Just Her Hub. We call them our hubbers. It's an extension of the rideshare. It's a place where we connect and engage and support each other. We also highlight other small businesses. We don't monetize it, but that is a community at justherrideshare.com. And then, of course, you can find us on all social media platforms at Just Her Ride.
I love it. And I'm going to put as many of those links as I can into the description below so that people can access those very, very easily. And I love that you're not just creating this app for a transaction of getting from point A to
Oh,
point B. You're truly building community, and that has so much power to start shifting the way women think about our safety in
yes.
this modern age, because it is changing.
For sure. And Leanne, I have to say this that what we're building is a trusted network of women. It's almost essentially a platform that offers rideshare services. Even though we're a rideshare community, the way we look at what we're building, it's so different. And we're not in it just for a buck. We're in it to impact our community. There are women who are in transportation deserts. There are women who need appointments home. When we spoke with one of the largest hospitals here in Charlotte, Atrium, they told us that there are women who give birth and they cannot release them because they don't have proper transportation. And so every day they have to keep them. It costs them about $1,275 a bed to keep them. There are women who are impacted by social issues like domestic violence and sexual assault and human trafficking. The lack of mobility or limited mobility impacts the quality of life. Right now, we're doing some work with the Urban League of Charlotte, as we are other organizations as well. We transport one young lady that it's a 15-minute ride, 12 to 15-minute ride for her to get to her destination. It takes her 2.5 hours on the city bus. Tell me if
Ugh.
that's a quality of life for someone. So I always say we're more than just a ride to the airport. We're more than just a ride share. We are a community. And what we're doing is impacting our communities, and we're solving transportation problems, not just for the ride share, those who can afford it, but also for people who need to be moved safely. So that's our mission and our vision, is that we're more than just a ride share.
I love it. I am so thrilled that you took the time out of your schedule today to be with me and our audience on this podcast, because I'm really passionate about what you do. And, obviously I'm
Thank
all
you.
about women empowering other women. And I think
Yes.
that makes our whole society so much stronger. So again, thank you so very much. Listeners, remember, getting home safely from wherever you are, this should not be a luxury. It should be
Mm.
the norm. So check out Just Her Rideshare, especially if you're in the Charlotte or one of these areas in the Carolinas. Even if you're not, check it out and see how you might be able to get involved with this community, because I think this is definitely going to be a game changer for women in our community. So, folks, until next time, drive safely, stay aware, and don't let anyone get into the passenger seat of your life. You have to be the driver. We're out of here.